Yeah, Lynette Charters. Welcome to my home. Thank you, SPSCC, for making artists' work and creativity available and entertaining us all in these weird times. And thank you, Nicole. Following on the shirt tails of Susan Christian, who did a blinding job yesterday. It's very enjoyable. So this is the series that I kind of launched into 2 years ago. It's the Missing Women series. It's all about how women are pretty much underrepresented in galleries and in the history books. We do achieve great things, but they're not documented as much. And it's the same for any section of society that isn't kind of white or male, or using kind of a heterosexual lens. So that it's not just women who suffer from this, but because I'm a woman, I can speak to this quite fairly effectively. So they're all a bunch of famous paintings in frames, and I usually mount it like a gallery show. And they're all kind of famous paintings, but I took the women out and I left the wooden board showing through. So there's actually no paint on here. Where there are no women in my shows, they're not there, they're gone. It's just the painting is around the image, but the woman that's where the woman should be is just woods. So I am going to take you on a little tour around some of the works. They're not very elegantly displayed, some of them, but just a quick tour. And you can find them on my website. So some of them have candy wrappers on them. And the candy wrappers are all about how women are packaged. This one's Klimt's Judith, the second one, not the first one. And she is delightfully covered in, surrounded by these candy wrappers and wine foils. Some of them have little messages on them, so if you see my work, look for the little clues. And this one is actually wrapping paper, which is appropriate. So I just have some of them out. They're not all here. I've got a bunch. So I want to talk about, how did this happen? How did you come up with this idea? And the truth is, actually, sometimes ideas come from a figurative to an abstract conclusion, and other times it comes the other way around. So I was doing all these paintings about how, for me, they meant how society was supported on the labour of unpaid women. And I was doing all these little mounds which were kind of assets. And women's breasts are always described as assets. And so I kind of turned that into a visual thing with lots of houses. We just moved from Los Angeles, where people build houses on the most precarious places, and this was kind of worrying in an earthquake place. The will to kind of make money from building things, not really looking at the shortfalls or the warning signs, was kind of in my mind at the time. So I was painting a bunch of these, and and those candy wrappers started coming in because they were about kind of the throwaway nature of all this. I kind of hit on this one, which was the press during the Clinton presidency, and all the Clintons were late, and all the photographers started taking pictures of the cat. So I found this kind of interesting, that people will just take money pictures, and it's kind of an intrusion of people's privacy. So I started working on this mound that was kind of like a breast, and society's obsessed by women's breasts in a very unhealthy way sometimes. So I took the photograph, and then I took the cat out, and this is a photocopy transfer onto emulsion. That was the original reason why I started doing these, and I thought, well, maybe I could turn this actually into a figurative thing, because I started to become very uncomfortable about the itemization of women's bodies. So I decided I needed to actually show the whole woman, And then I thought, well, I need to show the whole missing woman, but I needed a framework. I mean, while I was doing all this, I was very conscious of the fact that being a woman, we've got a lot less chance of being shown, our work being shown. So I thought, well, why don't I speak to that? You know, I thought I'll just paint a gallery where all the women are missing. So I picked on famous paintings because I know that they attract attention and women's breasts attract attention. So, but it was hopefully to attract attention with the view to speaking to women's issues, using our bodies to speak to our own truth. And this is the last one, which is covered in lots of candy wrappers. It kind of went overboard, and that was an intentional thing. And then it occurred to me that maybe I could just do a whole room of breastfeeding Madonnas. Women are always over-sexualized. People can deal with images of women's breasts if it's from the point of view of the woman pleasing someone. But if it's to actually provide a function, then it's often frowned on in society. So I'd like to speak to that at one point. I'm playing with an idea of actually highlighting women's own work, which this series is lacking. It highlights our absence, but it doesn't highlight what we do. So I feel the need to transition into that. I'm using a different framework, so I'm kind of mulling ideas, and I need to do a bunch of experiments. So that's kind of what I wanted to transition into. So I found that the whole process of transitioning from one idea or one body of work to another very interesting, and it's often quite scary because we're very comfortable in the place we are, and you know, I could keep doing these because people will buy them and I need enough for shows, so I keep making them because people buy them occasionally, and they take a long time to do, so I keep making them, but ultimately I have to try and do more than one thing. I have to try and do these and move on to something else. So when we transition into a different body of work, the things that I find work best are you get two different ideas from nowhere and you join them together, very much like with the abstracted thing I was working on. Sometimes if you just kind of play, and I just had a candy wrapper and I stuck it on there because I was kind of angry, and you know, the trashiness of society and the throwaway element of it, and I just kind of started throwing things on, and then you get ideas from doing that. So you know, it's really good not to block and not to have a good intention. It's good to have like fuzzy lines about where you're going and just kind of throw things in and try new stuff and see what kind of sticks and what means something to you. Often we throw things in there and we don't know why we do it, and then sometimes you think, oh, okay, that works, and then you find, and that might take you down a completely different avenue from the one you were following, which is often more exciting because it's not the obvious one. Has anyone got any questions?
Hi, it's Karen in England.
Who is it?
Karen, who was at college with you. We're here, and my husband Ruben wants to ask something.
Oh, cool.
Hi, we have the advantage of it being after 6 o'clock here, so we've already got a glass of wine. I'm sorry to those of you who are at 11 a.m. and therefore not able to indulge. The question I had is really about why wood occupies the space, and whether or not you are comfortable with the grain of the wood becoming an important part of the narrative, and you know, whether or not in a way we're thinking about the wood as a texture and its symbolism rather than about the absence of the woman whose space is now occupied only by wood texture.
Right. Yes. No, that was a concern. Actually, Susan Christian, my friend, helped me with that. So it was Susan that helped me come up with name the Missing Women series, because then you actually focus on the fact that they're not there. Everyone tells us that we shouldn't be always so obvious, and for me this is really obvious because I've been working on it for so long. But yeah, that's a really good point. It's difficult often as artists with how obvious do I need to be, but you know, ultimately the idea was to grab them first, grab their attention first, and you know, sticking a pair of breasts on anything, it's going to grab someone's attention. So that was but the title pretty much is, you know, the Missing Women series title is a big hefty clue. Probably too hefty, maybe, I don't know.
And the wood brings all sorts of characteristics or of implications, of references that are enjoyable and are potentially rich and very resonant with the purpose. I was wondering though whether or not, given your reference to the absence of women in the high art, fine art world, whether or not canvas would bring, you know, empty, unoccupied canvas in those spaces would bring some other references that are different from untreated wood. If you'd chosen to use canvas as your base and the gap was canvas rather than wood, that would do something else. I mean, you know, there's no right or wrong in any of this, obviously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I did it, and I followed the same thought path that you're following, which is the way artists think. It's like, how can I explore this idea? And the woods for me was the most appealing, only because it turns the space into an object. It, you know, it really very much objectifies. They become the same as the frame around them. Let me show you, you know, especially this one. You know, she's no more important than the assets that she's framed in. You know, she kind of becomes part of the goods and chattels, as it were, you know. So, you know, I like the fact that a lot of the wooden frames take on the same importance as the space. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. The reference to the object and almost transforming them into something more three-dimensional, despite the fact that they're flat, because they're the untreated area of the canvas, or the untreated area of the picture space, I should say. So yes, absolutely. It's very powerful.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. And also the wood itself, as you pointed out, is more three-dimensional because wood is slightly translucent, which gives it it kind of knocks that, you can't really see it on photographs, which is something I struggle with. If you see them in person, the wood looks like it's behind the paint. It doesn't look like it occupies the same plane as the paint itself. It looks like it's actually behind. So it even looks like when you're actually in the same room as the paintings that the woman is actually taking a back place behind the painting itself. So, but I love that idea of just toying around with what we're used to seeing in the news and in history books. It's actually really interesting to explore what we don't see, what we're not shown. That was a good point. Thank you for that.
And there's no underestimating, Lynette, the added skill, notwithstanding the skill of your paintings, the reproductions of the paintings, the skill in actually choosing the board in the first place is quite awesome. And you know, that's not to be taken for granted, because the positioning of the knots and everything, I mean, I don't know how you even start to make that work so successfully.
Neil, did you have a question? I see you raised your hand, but I didn't know if it was a mistake.
I was curious what sorts of considerations went into choosing which of the works to apply this to and to move forward on, and what was the thinking, you know, behind choosing the individual source paintings?
All right, so to speak to both your question and Karen's question about, you know, how do I pick the wood, you know, when I search through paintings, it has to be something that I can actually do. So, you know, a lot of times I'll be measuring knots on woods. You know, I'll have a bunch of candidates lined up on my phone that I flick through when I'm in the hardware store, and I'll kind of find ones that I feel that I may find that wood formation. And I've noticed there's a particular pattern in the wood formations that you know, I can go to, the easy ones. Other ones not so much, like the French one down here. And the you know, in terms of representation, I wanted to try and get, you know, not just, there's a lot of French women in history being painted, so I wanted to try and get different cultures in there. So, you know, when I do too much of one culture, I feel, you know, I have to move on and try and be inclusive. And it's difficult to be inclusive because when you search what people, you know, what comes up is what's popular in your own area. So I'm very open to suggestions about, you know, people have an inclusive idea from a different culture that I can try out, then I'd love suggestions. But one of the main priorities for me is to try and be inclusive, you know, because this is a problem that all women have. It's not just white women, white Caucasian from European descent. You know, and a lot of the images you see in history are going to be that because they're painted by white, Caucasian, European descent guys. So I want to speak to all women, hopefully. I know it's not possible, but I try. And also different time periods. It's important to me. I try and get modern ones and all, because we haven't moved on much. In fact, we seem to be going backwards in terms of women's representation. So I try and kind of highlight the fact that it's not just now and it's not just then. Yeah, I mean, it's not just in the past. It's still happening. It's we struggle. If we don't fight really hard, we go backwards. We don't even stay still. So, you know, getting that point across is important. Is that good?
I have a question. This is Susan. I came in late.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Bubby. You said a little earlier that the wooden part appears to be in front of the painted part. Is that what you said? Did I get that right or wrong?
Yeah, and it's the other way around. In reality, the wooden part, because wood is slightly translucent, anything that is layered in painting, as you know, it kind of it gives it a depth. Well, the wood naturally does that. So when I paint on it, I would have to put a lot of layers on my paint to get the same depth that the wood has. So it actually seems to, in appearance, it seems to set it back from the painted layers. I find, you know, if you look.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I got it backwards. Thank you.
Excellent, welcome. Any other questions?
I have one. This is Stephanie. So I'm really kind of looking at a encapsulated range of the history of art, probably with certain parameters. I don't see the entire range, but was there, to a certain extent, you're a copyist in the way that you're taking some of these works and you're recreating them, but leaving out the form, the human form. Which was the most challenging style to render? Which was the most joyful style to work in? I mean, I see de Kooning there. Was that a lot more fun? You know, because you're really, you know, more brutal in your approach. What about the styles?
Basically, I really enjoyed this one, but it scared the heck out of me. The styles I find in a delightful challenge. I embrace the fact that it may go wrong. That's one of the most interesting parts of it. This one, when I started doing this, John was like, really? You know,
it's like, so different.
You're going to try that? And I said, sure, why not? You know, so, you know, I do risk in every one of these, I do risk getting it wrong, and I risk sacrificing the wood. So I always have to kind of bear that in mind. But, you know, to be honest, I actually embrace and I really enjoy the challenge of just kind of like seeing if I can do it. Some of them scare the heck out of me as well, like, and it's not just that abstract ones. You know, I haven't yet touched a Dutch. Dutch
yeah, that would be hard.
Very obvious reasons. It's like, oh my God, you know, and I really would like to try to see if I can do it, but I know it would take me a million years. And, you know, my time often is limited in trying to produce enough to be inclusive and to keep up with, I mean, I don't sell them fast, but, you know, if I sell them, I'm looking at a month's work. Or I do like working hard, but I can't go full pelt all the time. It would kill me off, and my family wouldn't like me anymore. So
it occurs to me that you must really enjoy drapery.
Oh, really? No, I find it easy. Mm-hmm. It's not something I particularly enjoy more than anything else. I actually just enjoy getting the whole style. You know, when I tackle one of these are often more difficult, these ones, because these brushstrokes, to emulate, you know, Picasso's brushstrokes is just kind of tough, you know. And often, you know, the more figurative ones, well, we all learn how to paint or draw figuratively when we're in high school, so that's kind of well ingrained. But you know, but these ones, basically I have to do a gestural stroke and make it look like his, and I kind of bluff it. I kind of try to get the immediacy, and then I'll go in and faux paint over the things that didn't work. So I kind of get the general thing, and if it doesn't look like his, I'll go in with a tiny paintbrush and I'll you know, fix it kind of. But you know, ultimately the idea is not to make it look laboured, because theirs didn't look laboured. so mine can't either. So, you know, it's one of these things. I give it a go and see what happens. And I've only had one failure where I had to think, you know what, this isn't working. So, but these are all kind of, you know, very gestural. It's tough sometimes, but it's enjoyable. The challenge, I like the challenge. So, and what is it? The kind of naughtiness, the cheekiness of copying someone else's work. Women have had their work kind of swallowed up, and sometimes people claim, you know, inventions that women have done, or scientists, their work is kind of apprehended and reworked and retooled and thrown out as some guys' work. So it's actually, yeah, so it's actually symbolic in the whole meaning of the thing.
I love that.
You know, the fact that I'm getting to screw it back just to make the point. So that's fun. It's a fun part. It's very naughty. The whole series is very naughty in a very cheeky, brazen way, but I'm okay with that. So this is my little hidey hole studio. I have a very nice window, north-facing window, so I don't get any direct light. And this is kind of where I work on my small works. It's kind of messy. It's full of candy wrappers and trinkets and stuff. But I like to come in here and I can get out of the way. If the work gets too big, my family are very tolerant, and I end up working on the dining table or in the dining room, and everything moves aside for a while. And unless I take too long, they're all right with that. And then this is my workshop. I hope we don't lose connection. So yeah, this is where I kind of cut the wood and fix it to they're all fixed to these 3/4 by 3/4, and then the frames. I get someone else to do the frames. I'm hopeless at that. I don't have the right devices. So this was a Mother's Day present. Best Mother's Day present ever. And this is my bounteous amount of frames, because I've got about 100 of them or more, 2 probably. But I find these in thrift shops because I don't want new frames. I don't want them to be shiny new. I need them to be a little kind of loved. And so I take the frames. If I have bits missing, then I stick candy wrappers on them. So this I'll probably put a candy wrapper on it and maybe paint over it to dull it a bit to match in. So I'm happy with the damaged ones. And I realized that I didn't want to make my choices.
Lynette?
Yeah?
This is Mary. So it seems like you're going to carry on with this series.
Well, I've just pitched a bunch of my show in LA unfortunately got cancelled for obvious reasons this summer, and it's postponed till next summer. And I've sold 2 pieces, and I was gonna bring them down, so I'll bring them down anyway. I'll just make a trip down instead of staying there for the show. But if I pitch a show, I have to follow through. And if people buy my work in the interim, I have to make up for losses. So I do plan to keep this going while it's popular, and it doesn't seem to lose popularity. But I also want to move on. So I'm trying to figure out how I can do both, which is going to be challenging. But I don't know, maybe not so challenging this year. We're all at home. So I'm going to be busy at home, I think, just figuring stuff out. But yeah, I can't really abandon it, because if you pitch shows, then you need to show them, and if people buy them, I need to make up for it. So, it's one of those things that I'm happy about it. So I just can't just abandon it.
Well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely a good. It's
a good thing.
Yeah, it's a nice problem to have. Yes, but it's good. It's a big.
I have a question. Okay. I'm wondering if you take requests, because as far as emulating a painter, I think John Singer Sargent would be really fun.
That's the next one I'm doing, Madam X. And that's
what I was thinking. Yay!
Because She had a tragic story. He painted the painting of her, and she's not even naked, but people found it so scandalous because she looks so amazing in it. And it was someone else's wife, and people just found it completely scandalous because it was Victorian times, wasn't it? So she actually, that's why the painting's called Madame X, because she had him take her name off, because and eventually she, you know, she wasn't welcome in polite society anymore just because of that painting. Wow. It kind of her reputation. So you know, that's the kind of thing that women suffer that men don't really. You know, and it was just because of this one painting, which is actually not you know, it's not really, it's, I mean, she looks amazing, and that's her only sin, really, you know. So yes, thank you. I'm doing it. I'm going to do it next. I'll post it on the website. Hi.
Can you hear me? Hi. I'm a big fan of painting in a series because it helps an artist know what to do next, but coming to decide what the series is going to be about, that seems like a slow process. How did that work for you?
Yeah, at the beginning of that, I kind of spoke a little to it, but I'll go back again. Basically, I was just kind of this one represents it. Probably this is the biggest transition. I went from a kind of an abstract.
Yes.
I went from an abstract, and then I got a little more figurative, and then it dawned on me the potential of this. So this was all about building on assets, and I hope you get the meaning. It was all about on these assets, or these hidden assets even. So I started toying with the idea of things not being there. The image of women's bodies that we're fed in the media generally is it doesn't exist, and our poor daughters are trying to aspire to something that actually isn't human. So, and then I thought, well, I could use this and make the whole woman, because the itemization made me uncomfortable. So I wanted the woman to actually have more of a presence and speak for herself. So that's how I got figurative. Probably took a few months, 2, maybe 3 months, I'm guessing, from actually starting off from this and ending up with the idea of doing the gallery. And then I didn't even know if I could do it. You know, I thought, well, this is a lot of work, but I'll see if I can do it. And I just started, and I just didn't stop. Often it's the most scary part when you're transitioning from one idea into another, you know, body of work. You know, I was saying that it's good not to limit yourself. I was talking to Ned Hayes about this. He's a local writer, and he was saying quite often when he writes, he'll take 2 different ideas and meld them together, because that's usually when you get your most delightful surprises, and it's usually the direction that's not the well-trodden path. It's kind of more fun, and you get something that is more you. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.
That's also some great advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Are there any more questions for Lynette? All right. Well, I hope that everyone managed to get in, but I think we're all kind of learning Zoom. So right now, the best way to get to this Tuesday and Thursdays at 11 is through the Facebook post or the Instagram bio. And feel free to email me if you have any questions, or if you'd like to share in one of these yourself. Thank you, Lynette, so much.
Thank you, Nicole, for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynette.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.